comes to fans, it is a fan's right to have whatever opinion they want to have. And people are going to be upset because, especially when you're talking about books or games, because you're never going to be the exact person who they had in their head or who they played on Witcher 3, for example. I don't necessarily consider that toxic. I just consider that passionate.
Doctor, before you go, one question.
Yes?
Where in the galaxy is Sanusi?
Show us your tits and I'll tell you.
You know what? There is a single reason why I wouldn't want to become a merman. I wouldn't have my penis anymore. I'm serious. I wouldn't have my penis anymore.
Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and you're on a channel who tries to do its intros correctly. But when Adam shows up, I think it's an Adam problem, not just a YouTube problem. Just whenever he's around, intros just fall apart at the seams because he's laughing. He gets cracked up with his own videos, hearing himself make old jokes.
Hey, I'm a riot. Okay, listen, I'm a riot. Hey, listen, I'm gonna clip out that last rant I did on Roundtable on Sunday, the one.
Mm-hmm. I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
That one's going in there.
Well, hail everyone in the chat and welcome to this edition of The Ginger and the Jew, where we're going to be talking about The Witcher Sirens of the Deep. There were other people who might have been able to make it, who might make it in later, but we'll see how it goes. It might just be us, but it's not like we never stream alone. Nah. We've never done that before. I mean, I don't even know who you are. Like, it's been so long since I've seen you. I've forgotten your face. Do we know each other?
Well, I got a haircut recently, so.
Oh, that's what it is. Yep, that's definitely
you wouldn't know what that
is.
is. You wouldn't know what that is at all, would you?
I haven't had a haircut in 4 years. It's been 4 since I was in the Air Force.
Here's the thing: if my hair, when it gets long, I've got crazy waves and calyx. You've seen it when it gets to what most people still call normal length. It gets nuts. So it has to get down.
Everyone has that transitional phase, the awkward phase when they're growing out their hair. Once you get past it, it's all good though. Look,
I can't do it.
You can't fight through. You gotta power through.
No. Listen, it's all still here, so I'm gonna keep it as it is. And it's not graying either. I'm maybe an old man, but ain't no gray. I don't color my hair. Ain't no gray, and it looks brown, but it's actually dark blonde. For all you people calling me names, whatever. Let's move on.
It does look brown.
I know it does, but it isn't. It's you've seen me in person. You know it's actually dark.
Well, we are here to talk about Sirens of the Deep, the newest entry in the Witcher universe over at Netflix. And we watched this together last night with a few other people, and that video will be coming out, our watch along, in the next couple days. But it wasn't anything special. I know some people were hoping it'd be good because Nightmare of the Wolf was okay. I know other people were just boycotting it entirely because of how bad the live action show has been. And I totally get that. If I weren't a YouTuber, I probably wouldn't be checking this out.
Yeah.
But it didn't have a whole lot of substance, is I think the main conclusion we came to. But Adam, after sleeping on it, do you have any new thoughts on Sirens of the Deep, or what are your overall impressions of the film?
Actually, I'm still pretty the same I was last night when we watched it, which you'll all get a chance to enjoy our basically talking through the entire movie. we didn't shut up for an hour and a half. It was just bitching and moaning the entire time. What we have here, and this kind of relates to something you and I were talking about a little bit before. It's something where we go into something and we're going to see if it's book accurate, especially with what we cover. Usually it's stuff that's based on some sort of on-page lore, whether it's a comic or a book or even a game. And we are there to go in and tell people who are, for somewhat of a lack of a term, normies on a subject. They may not be a hardcore nerd on this. And as you requested, I had read the short stories, A Little Sacrifice, leading up to this. Little Sacrifice.
Little Sacrifice.
Okay, I got it right. Yeah, me. Little Sacrifice. I read the actual short story in preparation, and this thing what we watched last night was a complete and total departure from accuracy. And we complain about that stuff a lot whenever we're covering this stuff. How hard is it to simply make something accurate to what you're basing it upon? Now, as we talked about in a previous discussion, as I mentioned last night, when you guys see this, There's not much to go on in A Little Sacrifice. There's just not. It's like 20, 30 pages, 40, something like that.
It's 40 in PDF, 60 in print. So it's not a whole lot, yes.
No. And it's really just a character study of Geralt and his mood at that point of the book concerning this and that and events and how he's going to relate to those around him. There's one minor action scene in the whole thing, and it's Geralt not at his finest. It's like a gimped fight. He's in water, and he runs away. And it's not as though he was hired to... Well, he was hired, but he was hired to find out, not kill. That's what it was. Hired to find out what was the source of the murder on the skiff. But what we got last night was this cockamamie thing of, hey, let's have mer people and humans go to war for what at first you think is no reason, but is actually manufactured reasonings. And then we're going to pepper in moments and certain bits of dialogue from the short story so then you can claim, look, we followed the book. But you didn't.
I 100% agree. Sirens of the Deep adapts A Little Sacrifice, much like my colon adapts Dinner. Some of the pieces are still there, but it's just a bit shitty in the end.
Ew. Then who am I to talk? I say things like that all the time.
But yeah, it virtually has nothing in common with the short story. The short story, to be fair, is not the right source material to adapt into a film. It would have been fine as an episode of the season 1 of the TV show, because it is, like you said, very character driven, very much about the relationship between Geralt and Essie, and how Geralt is getting over his recent infatuation with Yennefer, even though we don't see her or have pointless flashbacks to her. The book trusted the audience to figure out, hey, Geralt's pining after Yennefer. You can see it there. We don't need to show you that he's pining after him with 3 extra flashbacks and a vision sequence of Yennefer saying, you're pining after me, but you feel bad because you want to screw this young chick.
And there's even a line in the short story where when he's fighting the, what are they, Voldenik? Is that how you pronounce it? Voldniks. He's fighting the Voldniks, and he says, if I get out of this, I'm going to try again with Yen. He even says that at one point. And that's all you freaking need. You don't need pointless flashbacks of not even real Yennefer. What we got last night in this movie was Netflix Witcher. Because it wasn't even Dandelion, it was Jaskier, who's very gay. And
they made him even more effeminate than he is in the TV show,
which is a very big deal.
Because
I mean, he slides in. Look at me. I'm gonna frolic around. I'm gonna say stuff, and they took away his like masculine traits from that story, because in the short story he is much older than Essie. And she's like a younger sister to him who he helped raise, and neither of them is from that region. But in this thing, they're both from this region, and she's the one that protected him from the bullies.
That was a fantastic flashback. Just seeing Jaskier as a kid getting beat up, and then the girl come in and save the day. It was just beautiful. And I think that's one of my biggest problems, besides the ending of the film, is how they made everything so interconnected.
Yeah.
Going from just classic interwoven story, which is an important thing to a certain extent, and just making it so incestuous almost with how many connections there were. Essie and Jaskier are both traveling bards who happen to be at the same place at the same time in the events of the short story. That's one minor coincidence. But this random kingdom where all this is happening happens to be where Jaskier was from. And Essie happened to be his childhood best friend, and his childhood bully happens to be the bastard of the king, who happens to save their lives at the end using the same trick he did as a kid off a diving board. It's just so much bizarre connective tissue through everything that doesn't make any sense, and it's just contrived. And these are not good writers. I think we've established that a lot with the Netflix universe. Is they're incompetent and they're very lazy. Another example of just lazy writing is they don't seem to believe that a character can be invested in a potential war on their own without any outside motivation. So they gave Essie a family that's all there and a young nephew who's being drafted up into this war to motivate her to be involved in the story. That's just so more superficial and so much more cliche, honestly, than the version that we got in the short story. And that's another thing, is that the cliches are rampant throughout it, and the inspirations that the anime film took from other things besides The Witcher. There are far more inspirations from other sources, mainly classic Disney, than of The Witcher. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they totally they literally ripped off Disney's version of Little Mermaid, the classic one. Not even, I mean, we're not even talking the live action Abomination from a couple years ago. They pulled out moments where, oh, look, here's Ariel, Shazina, whatever the hell her name is, went to see the Ursula stand-in to get a potion to transform herself, and it was just it was Little Mermaid. You'll see it when you guys watch this. I'm saying I'm going poor unfortunate souls because I felt like they're gonna. She did break out into song.
She
It
did.
wasn't that.
And Rachel actually rewatched Poor Unfortunate Souls, and some of the camera angles were the same. Like,
Really?
Poor Unfortunate Souls ends with a close-up on Ursula's eyes as it fades, cuts to something else. The same exact shot is how that sequence ends in the anime film. Like, they're supposed to be taking inspiration from the original Little Mermaid story, which this A Little Sacrifice is an adaptation of, not the Disney one. That's the whole point, because the Little Mermaid, I believe, existed, the Disney version, when Andrei Sapkowski wrote the short story.
89.
89.
Oh, yeah.
So he 100% was aware of it, and I could believe that he was making this to kind of make fun of Disney's Disneyfication of the fairy tales that a lot of people had a problem with back in the day, and then just to undo all of that by adapting the Disney version rather than the original is just so misguided and shows a lack of understanding of your source material.
Well, to your point, they totally, as you predicted, they reversed everything. In the beginning, you said the dude the prince who used to be a duke in the short story, a prince who's very, let's just see, DEI. He's very DEI. He accomplishes nothing in this movie. And in the book, as the duke, he's just a dumbass. He's an asshole who's horny for the mermaid, who he's been literally dicking around with up to this point. But in the book, they're both kind of assholes, both Shazina and Duke Agravon, whatever. What's his name?
Aglaval. Their names are ridiculous.
Yeah. They're both bad individuals. They are selfish, bad individuals. And her little she's the one that makes the little sacrifice in the end. But in this one, you said in the beginning, the prince is going to be the one to go under the sea rather than she's going to be a part of his world. So what do you know? At the end, as soon as that scene we're talking about, Poor Unfortunate Souls, where she gets a potion and you caught it right away, she said, it'll put you in the image of of the one you love the most. Not it will make you human.
You to assume the form of the one you love.
Yeah, not turn you into a human. Assume the form of the one you love the most. And you said, damn, he's gonna drink it. And then right at the end, he drinks it, and for no reason whatsoever is floating in the air when he transforms. It's just what did the power shoot you in the air so you could float?
Apparently.
So, and then he goes and lives under the sea. And you had a great point as to how bad a story decision was at the end.
Yes. So this moment that you're referring to, I think, is the clearest example of the message being a motivation. They clearly went into this with the idea, we want the man to be the one to sacrifice something instead of a woman, and they never bothered to justify that or make that integrate into the story in a logical and consistent manner. What they did instead was break the narrative. So the prince in this version of the story is the only person who really is on the side of the mermaids in the royal family that's left, who has any sort of influence, and he can stay beside his father and keep his father from restarting the war with the mermaids, and then someday assume the throne and maintain the peace. But instead of doing that, being the only human in this kingdom who can prevent future war with the mermaids, instead of doing that, he decides to become a mermaid, abandoning his position and enraging his father to the point that it's almost guaranteed that the war will reignite. and him and his beloved are still probably going to die. As soon as Geralt leaves, the war is going to restart, and everything was pointless. Geralt's involvement, everything they fought for, the events of the story is all pointless. And I don't think the writers understand that they made it pointless. They 100% made it irrefutable that the war will restart. In the version of the short story, the Duke, rather than the Prince, he was the one in charge of that little fiefdom. He was the one instigating the war, and his lover, the mermaid, who wasn't a mermaid princess, just a mermaid, she became human, not just to be with the one she loved. She became human to stand beside the man who could decide whether or not war was going to happen and convince him not to. She put herself in a position of influence to prevent the war.
Yeah.
In the reverse, the prince took himself out of the only position of influence, thereby reigniting the war. It is horrible writing.
And the war that we're talking about in this one was the reason it starts is because the king doesn't want his son marrying a mermaid who, by the way,
comes after.
But at the end, we learn the motivations. There's two motivations. There's
no. What I'm saying is he had his alignment with the Sea Witch before the romance started.
Did I miss that? I guess I missed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just hates mermaids for racism.
Okay, all right. So he just wants to kill mermaids, and the Sea Witch is angry because she got passed over because she's barren. She can't lay any eggs.
And they did such great writing when they revealed that she was barren. If you remember that scene at the beginning of the film, the queen, the king is meeting with the Sea Witch, and the queen's like, well, you want to understand what it's like to have love for a daughter or something like that. And then behind the Sea Witch is this seal. And she's saying that she's barren.
There's like this mer seal. We were like, what the hell is this? Why is there a mer? It's the only one in the crowd. It's not like there's a couple others. It's the only one, and that's our window of, oh, she's barren. Oh, wow.
And a writer who trusted their audience would have more than had the opportunity to introduce that information in a logical and natural manner. But having a seal just mouth gape, did she just say she's barren? Like some snide country valley girl in California is not the way to go.
And here it is. So in this stupid movie, you've got essentially humans bad and jealous bitch bad.
Mm-hmm.
In the short story, there's the humans didn't do anything wrong. They were just going about their regular old business in the sea, pearl diving.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it was in the anime where they're digging up barrels and barrels of oysters with every trip.
Pearl. It was a thriving pearl industry. It's a thriving industry. It's the cornerstone of their economy in the book. But in this one, in the short story, they range too close to a section where the Voldanite colony is, and the Voldanites attacked for no reason. It was just a bloody attack.
Well, it was kind of defending territory, but
there was no aggressive action. Is the point?
Absolutely,
the humans were not. They were simply fishing. It was a fishing boat or a diving boat, whatever it was. But point is, they were just working, not attacking. No soldiers, no nothing. The non-humans were at fault here. But this is Netflix Witcher. This is the general attitude of genre fantasy in the West right now. Humans have to be bad, and the other races, they have to be good because they represent black people most of the time. And oh no, you can't have somebody who's non-white be an antagonist here because they've been discriminated against in the real world. It's not the real goddamn world. Monsters, listen, we're not the ones across the board equating monsters with black people, Chinese people, Asian people, Japanese people, Latinos, Indians. We're not the ones doing that. I think
it's more racist, that they assume that that's the metaphor. When we're just like, maybe a monster's just a monster, dude.
Maybe an orc is just an orc, okay? And maybe fish people are just fish people. But no, in this one, they give us these very, very alien-looking fish people. They're not even sexy mermaids. They have nothing. And we were talking about this. The opening line of the short story is a very descriptive couple of sentences about Shizina's boobies. Very descriptive, how great they are, how perfect they are. And in this one, these mermaids, they got nothing. We were denied everything. Okay, all right. We were denied boob at every turn in this. So much so that I'd given up on it. And during the final scene where Geralt finally does Essie, which he does do in the book, but for different reasons, I'm just kind of like this, waiting for it to be over. And I'm watching Geralt, who's center screen, and I'm told, because I missed it, we got a little side boob nipple of Essie, who was very well endowed. But I'm looking straight at Geralt, and I get a shot of Manfro. All right? And everybody's like, Adam, why are you looking at Manbush? Because it was there in front of me, and I wasn't expecting there to be any more boob. I wasn't looking for it anymore, because every time should have been on full display, I was denied, so I'd given up. So I got a full frontal face of, wow, Geralt hasn't shaven. Okay, thanks.
It's not just you, man. I was in the same boat because they put his bush center screen and lingered on it, and the boobs were in a corner. The nipples flashed for like half a second.
Yeah,
they did that on purpose.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. They wanted to go, haha, made you look at man dick or man fro. We didn't see dick, but you know what I mean. Haha, we made you look at naked man when we finally gave you a partial nipple shot. And here's the thing. Netflix has not had a problem showing animated titty. In previous seasons of Castlevania, when it was still good, they showed titty. They had no problem showing titty. So they've done it as a production value. So for them to deny, especially in Witcher, which that universe is known between the games and the books, and even in season 1 of Netflix Witcher, boobs galore. Boobs galore. And you're rewarded for your horniness, for your goonerness in The Witcher. And they deny you here. They deny it. It just shows you they're not out to give the fans what they want. We want boobs.
It's not that hard.
No, it isn't. I don't know.
That's what she said. But yeah, that's kind of the basics of all this, is that Netflix doesn't want to give the Witcher fans what they want. This is normie bait at its best. I can totally see why a lot of normies would kind of find this passable, find it okay, or even enjoy it to a certain extent, even though they'll probably forget it in the next minute. It's not as offensive, I would say, as the majority of the rest that Netflix has given us. I still think Nightmare of the Wolf is better, but it's not based on source material. So I think this is the best Netflix adaptation of the Witcher universe. And that's kind of by default. That's not saying it's good or anything, but I can see this being generally positively received by the few people who are still interested in it, let alone invested in the Netflix Witcher universe.
For the most part, because they don't know any better. I mean, we're doing the service here. We're the ones who are, you more so than I, who like The Witcher, who are invested in it. I've played the games, you've played the games and read the books. So we know how the world works, how it should feel. And this thing, one thing I harped on a lot last night was the choreography in this. It makes no sense. This is Netflix Witcher, which is grounded, even, and I mentioned, even when you take the games into account, Geralt is not doing 20, 30-foot back-flipping, leaping, acrobatic fighting. That's not how it goes. The one time I can think about that is in the beginning of Witcher 2, when you're fighting the Kraken. And you're zipping about on the tentacles, but those are quick time events, and he's still hanging on for dear life. He's not jumping back and forth and flipping. He's jumping a little bit, but it's mostly holding on and slashing with sword. This concept of we're going to make it look like Japanese anime because we think it's all the same and we think you get away with it. It breaks, by doing that, you breaking the rules of the world. There's no high-flying acrobatic action. It's grounded fighting. It's brutal. It's gruesome. Now, they did make the fights gruesome. There's blood and gore everywhere. So it was very, very visceral in its representation of combat, which is fine. But this whole Geralt jumping around like a superhero, no, because it didn't happen in the Netflix series. And in the games, you don't. In the games, you're a dodge machine in the games. That's what you are. You spin around. And spin around in the good way. Not spin around for sword attacks constantly. You spin around, dodge. You don't spin around to get your shot in. it's bad. Well, let me phrase that. It shows they don't care to understand the rules of the world which they're playing in,
Hmm.
and it takes away enjoyment.
Well, people take the fact that it's an anime as excuse for changing physics, like seeing a man in full plate armor use a plank off a ship as a diving board and do a flip over him, Return of the Jedi style, and start fighting everyone. That just doesn't work in real world physics or in the physics established in,
Yeah.
like you said, the books, the show, and the games. And just because it's anime doesn't mean you have free reign to break down everything that's connected to it. Because
Yeah.
Sirens of the Deep is incompatible because of that with the rest of the universe. We can't see it existing with the Netflix live action TV show. And
Even though
that's a
it's
problem.
supposed to be a part of it, I think.
Mhm.
with
Yeah,
how
it
they-
fits in between 2 episodes in season 1 because, it
Yeah.
ends with them heading to the dragon episode in season 1.
I mean, and you talk about it like when Zestel, who was a character in the short story, but not the character portrayed in this movie. In this short story, he's just essentially head assistant to the Duke or some shit like that. He's the dude in charge of boats and shit.
Yeah,
This
he has
one,
no personal connection to anyone.
Yeah, he's a bastard prince in this one. And you said he jumps off the diving board, does a backflip full armor, but he's a regular human.
Hmm.
It's one thing if you establish, okay, this guy in armor has superhuman abilities, so the weight of the armor is meaningless for him to do large jumps or large feats of acrobatics. Doesn't mean shit. But this guy's a regular ass human. That plank, that walking plank, that board should have snapped as soon as he did that, because he was in half plate armor. And play by the rules of the physics of the world. And I bring it back to this. You don't even get that kind of shit in the video games. And video games, you get away with that kind of shit, but not in a Witcher game. Geralt barely jumps in the Witcher games. You can't jump.
His jump is pretty ridiculous in the game.
You can't.
But a moment ago, you mentioned the Kraken, and I want to talk about the Sea Witch's evil plan for this film. So the Sea Witch, she's in love with the king, the Mer King, but she's passed over for her sister because she's barren. And so she naturally comes up with this scheme to kill everyone in her family, align herself with the humans to wipe out the Mer people and rule over the ashes, basically. And the way she's going to go about this is find a pearl diver ship, and she wants the humans to think the royal mermaids, the mer people, whatever, they sent Vodnik to kill these pearl divers. Well, she has Vodnik under her control that we see later obeying her, trying to kill Geralt and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Instead of sending these Vodnik to kill the pearl divers so that the humans will think that the royal mer people sent the Vodnik to kill the pearl divers, she decides the best thing to do is to turn into a magic giant kraken. And you're thinking, all right, that's dumb, but okay, how is she going to do this? She has many arms now, so maybe she'll just, use her tentacle, grab spears with them, and stab them up above the water, which is something that we see her doing, at least her arms operating above the water at the end of the film. That would make sense. But instead, she decides to take spears in her tentacles and stab them up through the bottom of the ship to skewer all the pearl divers.
You know why they did that? I can tell you. Because they mentioned a kraken in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And how a kraken is a stupid creature that would have ripped the ship apart if it had actually been a kraken, and Geralt did dismiss that, but they just wanted to use a kraken because it was mentioned in the story.
Yeah, they saw justification for it.
That's
but
their justification.
At least have her, put her tentacles above the water and stab them, makes sense. But as soon as Geralt...
Yeah, you have to have something. You say you have to have something. You have to have a mystery for Geralt to solve.
As soon as Geralt finds the shipwreck, he's like, these spears are coming out of the planks of the deck. That's kind of weird. Yeah. And then he somehow, in her kraken form, she lost her necklace on the boat. I don't know how that's possible. The rest of her jewelry and stuff gets absorbed into the kraken that we see later. And she leaves it, and Geralt sees this and goes, this is a royal mermaid necklace. Even though I've never been to this kingdom before or interacted with these mermaids before, I know this is a royal mermaid necklace. And not only that, it could only belong to the sea witch aunt of the princess, because I know everything about mermaid politics in the mermaid royal family.
You brought that up last night. Everybody knows everything about everything in this movie. There's no knowledge gaps. where, oh wow, maybe we need to read up on something. Maybe we need to go find somebody who knows shit. No, everybody knows everything about everything in this. There's no so that we can instantly get from one scene to the next. And they as I said earlier, they appropriate conversations. Like in the story, Geralt and Dandelion
Mhm.
get the knowledge from Essie to go walk to the Dragon Teeth steps during low tide. In this one, yes, she's used for that, but it's done because, as you said, she wants to make sure her nephew doesn't go to war instead of the more tragic thing that she suddenly is finding herself in an unrequited love situation with Geralt, as in the story. And I want to bring up now, since brother, they butcher that poor girl in this thing. They butcher her. They butcher her story.
They
In
really do.
I mean, in the short story, she, like Dandelion, is a wandering bard of some renown. She has a unusually sparkling blue eyes, usually one covered by the front by part of her hair. So what she's called Little Eye, it's her nickname, and she's bewitching in that way. And she's got the same kind of boisterous talent as Dandelion, and it makes for interesting. But she's also very aware of her surroundings, that she's a woman who falls in love at first sight with a man she knows she can't have, but then in the end gives into it and is doing everything in this because of her sudden love for Geralt, who at first thought he could kind of have a tryst with her because he's trying to get over Yennefer, but then very quickly realizes, wow, I feel absolutely nothing for this girl, barely even lust.
It's
And
tragic. The short
yeah,
story is so tragic.
and his little sacrifice, as it's back and forth between everybody. In the end, his little sacrifice, one, first, the gift of the blue pearl, which you mentioned earlier, which she turns into the talisman that carries with her. His little
Which
sacrifice
isn't in the anime.
which isn't at all. His little sacrifice, which might even be the real little sacrifice of this whole point of story, not just what she's not does for the Duke in the end, is to play house with her and Dandelion for a night. Play house, sleep with her, give her a great night, have some fun, create a nice memory, and then leave it to the memory in the past. And for her, that was the greatest night of her life. And she held onto that memory and her talisman until the tragedy. And we learn 4 years later, she dies in a smallpox epidemic. And it's left to Dandelion to take her away from her body, and bury her safely so her body isn't part of a burn pit, and leave her talismans, her lute and her pearl with her medallion with her, and knowing that she never got to see Geralt again, and he's the one that's going to carry that, not Geralt, because Geralt has moved on at this point. I don't know, he's in all his shit, but Dandelion's going to be one that carries that. So that's the bittersweet tragedy of it all. Not why do you not? There is no the tragedy in this one. The closest thing they think is tragic is, oh, the king's got a skull sign barrel he's going to use to start the war over again. That's their idea of bittersweet tragedy. But as you've already pointed out, which could have been avoided with good writing and good character work. This thing is. This is why I hate all this modern adaptation crap, because we know every time we don't ask for one. We don't, because we know it's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But at least make an effort. Make an effort. Make an effort. I mean, you go. I was going to go to another one. You go.
Well, on the point of Essie's change, like you mentioned, her eyes are iconic for her look. They're the reason she has her nickname. That's what people remember her after reading the short story from. And I have some artwork here of what she looks like in the books. This is some fan art done, and you can see the glimmering blue of her eyes. They're piercing. You can't look away. Like I think this artwork is incredible. And the anime decides, you know what, this girl with the really impressive eyes called Little Eye, we're going to adapt it like this.
Yeah, let's make it nothing. She looks like a regular old anime girl. Not even. She's like mid-level anime girl.
Yeah, like it's fine if her eyes aren't important, but they even talk about her eyes like they're something special. They look ordinary.
Just, make it a piercing blue. Just like make it slightly glowing. Something.
Change the color a little bit.
And then cuts her hair off at
She
the
pulls a
end.
Mulan.
Totally. Just cuts her hair off and so that she can use it for once she gets out of a grasp, but then she uses it
To tie a potion to
to
his sword.
Geralt's sword. And she throws it to him so that he can take his Netflix Witcher potion, which is anybody who's played the games knows that there are numerous potions used for various reasons. In Netflix Witcher, it's just a one-all potion. It covers all basis of everything. And so he could take the potion and win the fight in gloriously bad fashion.
Much like Hercules defeats the monster in the Disney Hercules film from inside,
God,
cutting his way out.
I hate that movie. It's an
Really?
abomination. I hate. Listen, there's Disneyfication, and then there's shitting all over the mythology for the sake of Disneyfication, and just taking other parts of mythology and Greek mythology and throwing it in there so he can have a Pegasus and fight.
They mixed up a lot of the mythology. It's got names in common.
I mean, yeah. So I know that some people in our sphere love that. I despise that movie with a super red hot fire passion. I hate it. Okay. Tangent over.
Well, where do you want to go next? Is there another character you want to talk about? Dandelion's just gay in there.
Yaskier. Yaskier's just he's Netflix Yaskier. He's a pale imitation of Dandelion. Because
that's what he brings to the table.
Dandelion, famous womanizer, the true chronicler of all things Geralt, who has a serious part to him, is not Yaskier, who is a fop, who turns into later on a freedom fighter for the elves because reasons. Yaskier is nothing. He's pathetic. We pretty much got all our predictions right last night. I only got one wrong that I can remember. When I thought Bastard Son would live and become king. No, he got ripped apart. He got ripped in half.
Yeah, he's the White Son, so
yeah.
I'm surprised he had even a partial redemption arc, to be fair.
Yeah,
but it didn't last long.
Yeah, it did not.
Well, I briefly want to talk about the main thing that I see as positive in this film, besides what we already mentioned, that it's not as offensive as some of the other stuff, is Doug Cockle coming back for the role. The actor who played Geralt in the video games. I haven't come across very many voice actors who embody their characters to the level that he does. And it's always great to see him work. I have nothing bad to say about him taking this role, getting involved. I hope he gets many more opportunities to play Geralt, hopefully with a better writing and a story that actually deserves him. But he made middling writing enjoyable. And that's something that great actors and great roles can do. None of the other people in this anime were able to accomplish that because the rest of the acting was incredibly flat and uninteresting. Some of the animation tried to show like Essie having emotions, but the voice actress had either no emotion or she was angry. Those were her two modes, and there was no in between for that. The animation tried to help her, but yeah, Doug Cockle brought it. There was a little bit of a Frankenstein's monster thing going on with combining his portrayal of the character with Henry Cavill's to kind of bridge the gap, with him sighing a lot and muttering profanity. But he still was very good in the role.
The biggest sign of the poor writing of all this, constant profanity. That to me, profanity for sake of edginess is basically a poor man's attempt at trying to make writing in your face. It's like, we're gonna curse a lot, and that's our idea of great edgy writing. No, you don't need to curse.
Well, how much swearing was in the short story?
I don't remember much of any.
There's not a whole lot in the books.
No,
there really isn't that much. I mean, there's enough that you can say the F word.
And I mean, here's the thing: in my non-real world books, like there's fantasy worlds, other worlds, if you're gonna make up swear words, make up in-world swear words. Dropping F-bombs is the lowest form of swearing.
It takes you out of it.
Yeah, and even saying shit. Like there are other phrases referring to poop that can be used and are done miraculously well in all kinds of franchises. modern real world swearing, cussing stinks in these things.
Mhm.
I don't want to hear F-bombs in my fantasy. I don't.
You want to see
No.
titties?
Well, yes, that's what I want to do. Titties.
Well, you mentioned that you read a lot of other fantasy properties, and you've definitely read more in this genre than I have. And you've come across deep political narratives in these stories before. What do you think about the mermaid politics and the human politics of this film that it was partially marketed on? It's like, hey, the short story it was great, but we're going to add in mermaid politics. It's going to be great. So, how do you think this compares to classic Game of Thrones or Wheel of Time or any of these other more in-depth franchises?
Well, I mean, I can reference a lot of stuff I've read over the years. It's boring. It's shallow. It's the low-hanging fruit. Oh, let's, as you said last night, let's Romeo and Juliet this shit for our politics. Let's have the angry aunt whose reasoning makes no sense. Let's have a king who's a racist. It's not as
That's
though they're
all we get from the Mermaid King is he hates
yeah.
humans. Same with the
That too,
Queen.
yeah, and same with the Human King. They're all racists. It'd be one thing if it'd be one thing if the Human King wanted the riches of the Mer Kingdom. There's untold riches down there. That's a motivation that's understandable. Greed is a lot better than racism for politics because suddenly, oh, we get the riches. We're a rich kingdom. We can do all this stuff. We can maybe then build a war machine and go make war on other human kingdoms. That would make sense, especially in the world of the
Mhm.
Witcher, where the human kingdoms war on each other all the time. This makes no sense. It's very stale. It's limited. There's no depth to any of this, and that's why it's boring. And and here's the thing: they're going to give these characters. None of them get any sort of real portrayal, real backstory, real nothing. Merking is there. I hate humans. Wife Queenie, I'm here because I had eggs and my sister didn't. And oh, I'm a healer too. Don't you know? I mean, it's king in the land, made up king in this story. Oosvelt, whatever his name was. Uh, I hate fish people, and I want my son to have a human wife so that I could have my lineage go on.
And I don't know if you thought about it. I thought about this afterwards. The
Mm.
human princess he brings to kind of entice his son back to humanity is the sea witch in disguise,
Which
and
I
he knows
called.
it. You did call it, but the king knows that. So
Yeah.
his attempt to get his son away from fish pussy is a different fish pussy. It's a bit fishy.
It's all fishy. It's just ridiculously dumb, boring, uncreative, which is the standard for everybody involved in all these IPs across all these streaming services. For all the shit they're adapting, they do the bare minimum, and they think that that's enough. They grab lines, they grab characters, they grab pieces of events, they throw it in there and think that's enough to get away with adapting it. And then they make up a bullshit padded story. This was an hour and a half last night.
It didn't need to be because, yeah, if you're expanding on a short story that's 60 pages long into a movie, you have time to add and develop new features that weren't in the original. But
Yeah.
this film doesn't do that. It just adds 100 different things and gives them no time to breathe. We don't need all those flashbacks with Yennefer. We could spend that time developing the father-son relationship between the new king and the prince. We could have more with the politics of the mermaids. We have these ideas that were implemented, but that was it. It's all superficial, all spectacle, and no substance. And
Yep.
that's something that we talk about a lot. Is that's not okay in the majority of franchises. There are franchises that are built on spectacle versus substance. I would say the Fast and Furious franchise is the best example of that these days. But The Witcher has more going on. There is depth to it. So seeing them debase it in this way is turning wine into water.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the sad thing. Let's go back to when this all started. You know, they hire Cavill. We know that we learned that Cavill's a big fan of this. They had a chance if they had just followed the roadmap, they could have had content for years.
Mm-hmm.
For years. If they had just
at
followed the
least a
roadmap.
decade. Like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be difficult to get a decade's worth of content every year releasing something.
Yeah.
Not
Go
hard
through
at
the
all.
books, go through the games, and then you're there. And you've got you find your place on the shelf of things that people want to own and put it on there and rewatch it over and over again. Instead, here we are, a mere 5 years later, 4 or 5 years later, since they dropped season 1, and you got nothing. You're left with discount Hemsworth. You're left with you're left with a bunch of wannabes who were very happy to do certain things in the season 1, but now refuse to do them in season 2 because it affects their art. And then you've lost the storyline completely. You've butchered it way too much. And then you're now you try to get a little bit of something here, try to appease the fan base with something that is a part of it yet not. You like to get Doug Cockle, and you still drop the ball because you have to not only push some agenda in there, because there was agenda in this.
Oh, 100%.
But then you have to you tell a shitty story. You tell a bad story which has zero relevance to what it means for Geralt as the Witcher, his character, his relationship to people, and you ruin a very poignant small story. I mean, as you said to me last night when we were talking about this is one of your favorite ones, and I said it was okay, it was great, it was fine. It didn't stand out to me as anything great, but it has a couple great moments of, wow, this is meaningful for Geralt. It's a meaningful relationship he makes with Essie, and it's a very sad, bittersweet thing that she gets involved with him and is left without anything for it in the end, except the fond memory, which she holds on to dearly and then dies with it. That's it. And to tell that, but see, they're not brave enough to tell that kind of story. They think they have to normie it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and make her leave all happy. She left on her terms. Oh, yeah. I don't actually love you, Geralt. You're just kind of hot, and I wanted to bang you. I want to have kids, and you can't have that. And yeah, after begging to screw him the entire movie, they actually do it. And she's like, you know what? I'm good, man. See ya.
Yeah. Yep.
It's incredibly shallow, and that's the last thing, a big thing I wanted to talk about before we close out a little bit early, is the romance of this film, both Essie and Geralt, and the prince and the mer princess, who, you know, none of these characters are even remotely what they were in the books. You, as we've talked about in previous Saturday Night Drive-In episodes, you're a big fan of epic classic fantasy romances. Love at first sight is something that appeals to you. How do you think the two main romances of this were done in comparison to the book and just overall?
In the book, it's not romance between the Duke and the mermaid, it's lust. They're just horny for each other. And they both talk a big game about little sacrifice for love, but they don't really do much of it. And in this one, you got these two who don't even speak the same language, but literally mention that they F. They literally were saying, oh, you just wanted to F me. And of course, we ask the question, how? I mean, she's still got mermaid lower half, which is, and he's a dude, which is why I said in that clip from the opening, I wouldn't want to be a merman because I lose my penis. So there's all, it's just no. I mean,
they're incompatible. The short story specifically mentions that she lays eggs like a fish and needs him to fertilize those eggs like a fish. They're not compatible. So just having like, oh yeah, they banged, ooh, type thing is so shallow and meaningless. And that's the thing, like Salty Traveling Seas talking about in the chat, is the relationship between the Duke, not the prince, and the short story and the mermaid was absolutely a cautionary tale. They just were infatuated with each other. They're both terrible people, using Geralt as their go-between and just screwing with him in the process because they can't speak the same language. Even in the anime movie, they don't speak the same language, but somehow they're communicating still. It doesn't make any sense how deep their relationship is, but it's And then it's all resolved in kind of a sad way. She becomes human to stand beside him and prevent the war, but there's absolutely no guarantee that their relationship will last. In fact, it's more than likely that the relationship fell apart, that she was fighting a losing battle. But unlike the way that they changed the ending in the short film, in the anime film, she's actually fighting that losing battle. She's trying to prevent the war. So there's still that bittersweet angle to it. She doesn't just abandon everything and open the door to all out war and death by switching species sides, because that's exactly what happens in the anime film. And it's heartbreaking, honestly, because I think there were moments, like Essie says when talking to the Duke, moments where their humanity came forth. There is decency in both of them, as shown through their actions, but there's nowhere near enough to prevent all this from happening.
Yeah.
And I that depth, that nuance that was in the short story is just taken out of the film. You've just got a gay twink looking brown boy who's like, oh my God, I love her so much. And somehow banging her. And then in one conversation, they're like, wait, you're a mermaid? Wait, you're a man? Oh, we hate each other now. And it just escalates from 0 to 100. And then in the next scene that they interact, he shows up in the big final fight. And
out of nowhere, literally.
Oh, we love each other again, even though we can't talk to each other. I know why you came. I know what you're thinking. It's also superficial.
You want to have sex with me again, don't you? That's what it is. And to your other part where how Essie was done dirty, she has no real story in this movie.
You could cut her out and barely make a difference. Same with Yaskier.
Yeah. She doesn't have the gravitas, the sadness of her short story counterpart, which means something because it's really about her. The short story is really about her.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about even Geralt. It's not about the mermaid and the Duke. It's about Essie and what it's like for her to touch the world of Geralt and be burned by it, essentially. And in this one, she touches it and she touches it all night long and then moves on all happy with no consequences. And I wouldn't even necessarily say that her death is a consequence or anything in the short story. It's just a tragedy that she never got a chance to circle back and see him again.
The Witcher universe, the Witcher universe is a brutal world with consequences. That's a thing that's harped on a lot in the books, is consequences. Even in the games, you're dealing with the consequences of the book events, and it's never pretty. You have tough decisions. Sometimes they turn out wrong, and things fall apart. But the Netflix universe is just always putting nice little bows that don't make sense and fall apart under scrutiny at the ends of the stories, and be like, yep, they lived happily ever after. Did they, though? The king is furious with the mermaids, and his prince, who could have talked him down, abandoned him. It's going to happen again.
Yeah.
They
show you the skull barrel, the poison barrel. I mean, it showed you in the movie. He's going to do something horrible. They don't care. In the end, they don't care.
They really don't. They just wanted their message that it's the man's turn to sacrifice instead of the woman's, even though it wasn't about man versus the woman sacrificing the short story. It was about the one that made the most sense. He was of influence in his world. She was not. It's just the way it worked. But I think that's all that we can talk about. It's so superficial that there's no point in doing a more detailed breakdown than this. There's hardly anything to it. So chat, if you want to watch it, you're more than welcome to watch the anime film, but I hope we've come into play in your decision for that. We've suffered through it for your enjoyments.
We suffered, all right.
We definitely suffered. But do you have any closing thoughts, any last things that we didn't talk about that you want to add?
The Witcher franchise is all but dead, especially on Netflix, and we have a lot of worries about the fourth game coming out.
A lot of worries.
So,
well, to answer Salty's question in the chat, it is not worth traveling the high seas, in my opinion. It is the best, as we talked about earlier, best thing that Netflix has adapted in the Witcher universe. but that's such a low bar that that doesn't translate into actual quality. So I would recommend it against it, but you might want to torture yourself for
We
pleasure.
we wanted to watch it at 1.5 speed, but it wouldn't let us.
Yeah, Netflix took away my option, at least in my browser, to do 1.5
Yeah.
speeds. So
Couldn't do it. It.
that's the only way we made it through season 3 of The Witcher.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to wrap things up, Sirens of the Deep is entirely superficial. It focuses on spectacle that isn't all that engaging, as they talked about in the chat. The action's kind of boring. As you talked about, the choreography is basic, and it doesn't fit in with the rest of the universe. There's very little of value besides Doug Cockle's performance in this anime. I would recommend against watching it. I don't know if you want to add in a score like we do at Saturday Night Drive.
Oh, this thing's I would say a 2 or a 3.
That low?
Well, there's nothing redeeming about it. I mean, I want that hour and a half back. I mean, I didn't get anything out. I didn't even get titties. If I got titties, you can at least get close to a 5. There's titties. I could fap to this shit, but I can't. Give me nothing. Nothing redeeming. It's terrible.
Well, I think in a strange twist and irony of fate, my score is actually higher than yours. I think there's enough that normies will like it. I'm trying to detach my utter hatred for what Netflix is doing, and I think this is closer to a 4 in my opinion. There is stuff that it's very much turn your brain off and enjoy it, and if you fall into that category, you're going to be fine with it and then forget about it right afterwards. So I think that's more in the 4 category, but it's nowhere near as incredible as the short story was or the rest of the Witcher written franchise or even the game franchise. As much as I have problems with the writing and the performance of the first game, the gameplay is terrible. It's aged horribly.
It's horrible.
It's still so much better than everything that we've gotten in the Netflix universe, and it doesn't look like that's going to change. Do you have any hope for seasons 4 and 5? 5 about to film or currently filming?
I hate you for making me watch it. Because it's not something I'm gonna. I literally is not something I will watch on my own. I do it because you make me.
Well, to finally end things off, we have a super sticker from Salty Traveling Sea for $2 of a corgi just sending hearts to us, and we need love right now. We have damaged ourselves, and we just need hugs. I think. I think we need to go full girly, wrap up in something.
Okay, I don't need a hug. I'm fine. It's all right. Yeah, I'm good.
So they ask in the chat briefly, do you want to talk about the animation style? I'm not versed in anime enough, or just even in general, to say if it's good or not. It didn't work for me, but
it's average. I mean, comparing it to Castlevania was excellent. At least the first 3-4 seasons. Not Nocturne. We're not talking Nocturne. Talking that shit. That was really good stuff. This is your bare average animation. They were lazy. When you guys watch it, watch it. Derby is going to point out how the background characters, they're static. They're reusing animation stuff. They're not making any unique models. There's no beauty in this. They could have made Essie a beauty, but they didn't. Even when they bring in Yennefer, she's not beautiful in the flashbacks like Yennefer should be from the games. They don't do anything. They even screw up Geralt. Geralt, he's too clean. He's too nice. He's too smooth. Doesn't look like Geralt. Sounds like Geralt, but doesn't look like Geralt. And Jaskier looks terrible. It's boring. There's nothing popping about the animation. It's pretty. It's as basic as you get. It's like they didn't even try to make it spectacular. The closest thing I'll say is the Kraken design is at least interesting. That's about the nicest thing I could say.
Well, there you go. Adam, do you have anything that you want to pimp before we get out of here and cleanse our palates?
If you guys are watching this in real time, I'm doing more pointless reviews of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man this week. That show's horrible in its own right, but it is Black Falcon Captain America week. So we're gonna suffer that at the end of the week. Oh yeah. So stay tuned for that review. Other than that, catch the weekly streams, catch the daily videos when I find something to grapple with. And catch us every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern for driving.
Perfect. Well, for me, this is actually a busy week for me. I know I put out 2 videos, I think, in the last year, but this week we have this coming out. My review for Sirens of the Deep, my video should come out sometime tomorrow, hopefully. And then the watch party, probably the day after that. And I think if the chat is interested, I want to do a separate video specifically talking about the adaptation quality of Sirens of the Deep versus A Little Sacrifice. I avoided that topic in the review, focusing on the quality of the writing and whatnot, but I'm thinking about doing a separate video on that. So if you're interested, please let me know. And then, of course, this Saturday for Saturday Night Drive-In at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be talking about Space Camp. I know I can enjoy cheesy movies. I know people don't believe it, but I can. I can. I might rewatch it for the first time in years tomorrow, and then just hate it. So we'll see how it goes.
I gotta watch it tomorrow. I haven't watched it yet. I almost forgot for a minute there. I watched Spider-Man today, and that kind of just flooded my brain. So,
well, that's all that we have for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Anon.